Hey everyone, welcome back to another Ask the Trainer episode. I'm Jonas from the Maxon training team, and together with my dear friends Noseman, Ellie and Darren. Oh, I think we have some problems here with the... Oh, give me a second. Give me a second.
Where am I?
Oh my gosh.
Something happened.
I am here.
They are here. They are here. And you're sharing your webcam? Are you sharing your webcam, guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me try this.
Lovely team icon.
Have we replaced Darren and Ellie with artificial intelligence? That
happened last year.
I wish.
Yeah, I mean, I can show their still frames. Now, Noseman, you're now gone as well. For some reason.
Noseman's been replaced.
Put a pyro tag on
me.
Put a pyro tag on him.
Mental image. Yeah.
Why is that?
Can print
Why is
out
that?
one of my
It's
avatars
interesting.
and stick it on.
Sorry guys, bear with us. That's interesting. That never happened before. So
yeah, that's weird.
It's
Yeah,
totally
we never
weird.
have tech problems. What's going on?
No, absolutely, never, ever.
While you're doing that, Jonas,
Noseman is not coming back for some reason. So here we go. Let's try Darren. No, that's just the still.
Wow, that's from my old place too. So shall we continue?
There's
with,
Darren, and now Ellie is gone. That is weird.
I'm loving
so for
the
some
one
reason
or the
it's...
other that we have.
let's blame it on technical issues.
If it's easier, feel free to remove me, because I know you and Thanasis and probably Darren are going to be talking a lot.
I won't remove you, Ellie. I won't remove you. What I will do instead is I'm directly going to jump over to share my screen. I hope this is working now. So here we go. And let me just switch ourselves
Keep your fingers
off here.
crossed, everyone.
There we go. You cannot see us anymore, at least now. Whew, what a ride. What a ride. That was probably the most exciting start of an Ask the Trainer session ever. And I think we need a producer. I cannot handle it here.
That's what I was going to say. If anyone
However,
wants to work for Maxon, send your CV. to jobs@maxon.net. We are looking for a producer.
Yeah, absolutely.
true.
So, it is actually true. And
Yeah, we are. Maxon is hiring. Check the website.
yeah, absolutely. So I'm already sharing my screen. And what you see there is the events page on the Maxon website. So if you go to news and events, you get to this website. Also, you can go to maxon.net/events, and then you find this wonderful website with all of the webinars on there that we're doing. All of these webinars are for free. You can just join us, hang out with us, ask your questions, and so on. And there's a lot of cool stuff happening. Not just Ask the Trainer, also VFX and Chill on Fridays. On Mondays we have Pyro at the moment, so we are changing the topic each month. And we also have Maxon Color every second Thursday. Then, just in case you missed one or two or maybe more of those webinars and you want to catch up, you can always go to the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel, and here you can see all the recordings of the webinars that we did. So this is definitely some exciting stuff to catch up with. And then we are always happy that you are here, and we want to give away free t-shirts. So I think Ellie wanted to paste the links into the chat and also the coupon code that you need as you try to log in there. And once you use the coupon code, you only have to pay for the shipping once you check out. So this is also something that is quite cool. All right, and another thing that is quite cool is something I have on this side. And the headline is Maxon closes the year with another Maxon 1 update and a new Cineversity. Yoo-hoo! And yeah, so we added a few things to Magic Bullet Looks. There is a new version of Redshift, and I'm gonna show a few things there before we start with our thinking outside the box with Pyro. Then there is a hotfix release for Cinema 4D, and the new Cineversity is out. The link is Cineversity. I should have opened this already. So cineversity.maxon.net. There we go. So this is the new Cineversity. Very beautiful website, and with Getting Started series for all of our products, all the software that we are doing here at Maxon, and it's a super good platform to learn all of the stuff as well. Right. Now let's. Did I forget anything? Well, I forgot one thing. Yeah, exactly. So, in case you're a student, it's always a good thing to know that student versions of Cinema 4D and ZBrush and Maxon 1 in general are just like very cheap. So for like $20 a year, you can get the whole Maxon 1 suite as a student, which is really, really cool. All right, now let's jump into, let's move to my other computer here. Let's see if that works.
I have one note.
I think it works. Yes, please.
The Redshift 3.5.11, I think it was, if you go on the Redshift website, there's a new hotfix, 3.5.12. So if anyone downloaded the .11 version the last couple of days, go and download the 12, which has a couple of hotfixes.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. All
you
right.
can do it through my Maxon as well.
Yes.
The Maxon app.
All right. So now let me show you a few things in Redshift. So the first thing I want to show is that in the render settings, you can see, well, I won't show the render settings first. Let me first switch to Redshift here and let me create a very simple scene just with a plane in it. And let's align it like that. And now let's open up the material editor and let's create a new standard material for Redshift and assign it to this object. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to open that material up. And I also want to start the IPR here. So what we can do now is we can search for bricks or brick, and you will find the brick shader that you know from Cinema 4D, including out color, displacement, and so on. And you can just link that into your material wherever you want, and you have the brick shader here. It's nice and procedural. You can adjust scales and all of that stuff. And the same thing, let me delete this, is true for the tiles shader. And let me bring this up here. And I want to spend a little bit more time here on the tiles shader because I really like it. And the reason for that is because you can create so many geometric shapes with it, and you can use it, or you can use those shapes in all of your channels. So first of all, let me set this to white, and then let's also copy paste the color over to the other slots here. So we just have a black and white grid. But now here you see the pattern, and we've got a lot of patterns here. So let me just choose brick 1 and then use the down arrow to go through them. So this one is a very cool one for alphas, for bumps, and so on. I also like, well, some of them have just a little bit variation with 2 colors versus 3 colors. That's why you don't see a difference here. We have hexagons, we have lines, then this is a parquet, and so on. Radial lines, Voronoi pattern, circles, or rings, then these saw teeth, scales, and one that I like a lot is not the triangles one, but triangles 2, and also triangles 3, which is coming with more colors, and waves. So if you have watched my presentation from IBC, this would have been the shader that I needed to not need to do all the mathematical stuff here. All right, so let's go with triangles 2. And as I said, I really like that. I'm going to bevel this a little bit more. And also down here, I'm gonna scale it down like so. And as I said already, you can use this in all of the channels, of course. So what if we created a bump map node and wired this up with the bump like so, and get rid of that here? Then you can see that we have this nice little pattern, and we can reduce the height scale here a little bit. And then there's another thing that I like to do. I want to make this material a glass material, so that we have something like this. And you can create really cool effects with these patterns on that. Let me make this pattern a little bit smaller. Let's go with 0.05, like so. And you can already see those speculars that are like in a 6-star shape. But once I add another area light here, and the important thing now is to, first of all, scale it down a little bit, then rotate it by 160 degrees. Let me undo this and let's make this here, like so. If you hold down Shift, you can always quantize the rotation. And now you can see that you don't see anything. And this is because in the Redshift area light, I want to check visible. And now you can see that we have this backlight effect, which is actually really nice. And if I just want to create like a small motion graphics setup with this, I can do that simply by going with something like that, and then throwing this into a cloner. That's not the cloner, into a cloner, and maybe make this, let's say, radial, and this direction, then like that, maybe 6 of them. And yeah, you can already see where I'm going here, and we can create a copy of that, maybe rotate this or offset it by 30 degrees and make this a little bit wider, for example, and then we assign one color here and another color here. And yeah, then the last thing I want to do is just crank up the extra roughness here. And there we go. So what we have here is a pretty nice effect with backlights, where you can make all of these lights flicker, for example, and create, yeah, as I said, cool light effects with that. All right, so yeah, the next thing I want to show is that we also now have Intel Open Image Denoiser in here in Redshift. And the way to bring this up is by going to Redshift, and then under Denoising, you can see that we now have OIDN. And yeah, this is also a denoiser that works in progressive mode. And the good thing about this one is that it also works on the Mac. All right, so this is Open Image Denoiser. Of course, you would have to let this render a little bit, because the thing about denoisers is actually that they can help you, but they will also wash out your textures a little bit and so on. So I'm quite critical when it comes to denoising, but this new denoiser is now inside of Redshift. All right. So now the last thing that I wanted to show you here is something that has already to do with Pyro. Let me start the IPR here, and let's have a look at this. We have this volume here that I created using Pyro, and then I exported it as a VDB. And now you can see that we have this as a black body emission. We can adjust the temperature and so on. But the thing that is new is that we now have multi-scattering for volumes inside of Redshift. And you can find that here in the render settings. Under globals, there is this trace depths section, and under volume, if you type in a higher number, if I'm not mistaken, all of these numbers are clamped by the combined one. So if I bring this up to 6, you will see that this is brightening up, and especially in those areas that were a nice mix between smoke and fire. If I bring this back a little bit, so here you can see that we don't have too much fire coming through, or too much of the light color. But if I bring this up, you can see that it's now, yeah, behaving more naturally. All right, so these are the new things of yesterday's release. And yeah, now let me do something else. So today's topic is actually thinking outside the box with Pyro. And one thing that you might expect from Pyro is to do fire, but you can do all sorts of fluid effects, fluid in terms of smoky effects. And one thing that is included in that would be water drops, for example, or drops, dropping ink drops in water. That's what I meant. So let's reduce the radius of this sphere a little bit, and let's bring it up here. And let's make this a Pyro emitter by going to Simulation Tags and then Pyro. Here we go. And if I press play now, you can see that it's igniting and it's behaving like fire. However, we don't want that. So first of all, I'm going to bring down the object voxel size, which is more like an object fidelity. Then I'm going to make this a volume emitter, and also I don't need temperature here because temperature actually is fire. All right, now let's play this back again, and now you can see that something else is happening. It's still, well, it is very, very rough. So let me bring up the project settings. There are multiple ways of bringing up the project settings. The fastest one is Control D. Then there is the one that most of the people know, which is this way, Edit Project Preferences. But you can also, in the Attributes Manager, go to Mode and then Project. And there you go. So let's go to Simulation, Pyro, And let's bring down the voxel size here. Let's go with 1 for now. And the voxel size is pretty much yeah, a parameter for the resolution of the effect. And if I zoom in here a little bit, you can see that this is already quite a cool effect. However, there is a lot of turbulence going on that I want to switch off. And I can do that in the simulation settings here as well. In the extra forces, first of all, I want to bring down the vorticity. And also under turbulence, I want to bring down the turbulence completely. And the next thing, let me see, there's still some buoyancy. Maybe we should make this +5, and this will already create a nice effect. We could also go with velocity, but in this case, I'm already happy with that. That actually looks really good. So one thing that we need for ink drops is a lower dissipation value. And yeah, dissipation defines how fast the smoke will vanish or fade out. So let's bring this down to a fairly low value. And there we go. That's already not too bad. Yeah, that's looking actually quite good. All right. One thing that ink drops usually don't have is like a constant emission here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change some things in the emitter. And I first want to set some density. So let me start with, let's go with 20 here in the set. And then I'm going to frame 1 and set a keyframe because all of the smoke is being created at frame 1. And then I go to frame 2 and set this to 0 and set another keyframe. So now you can see that this is happening. And you are very lucky because this is actually looking much better than my tests that I did with velocity here. So yeah, lucky accidents. Great. The next thing I want to do is I want to animate down the add density. So let's set a keyframe with the value of 10. And let's go to, let's say, frame 100. And let's bring it down to 0, like so. Let's hit play again. And yeah, this is looking quite good, I think. All right. One thing we could also do is to animate down the buoyancy a little bit. So let me go to the project settings again. And this time I'm using the shortcut Control-D. And let's go to frame 0 and set a keyframe for the density buoyancy. And let's go to 120 or so and animate this down to 0 as well. And let's see what it looks like. I really like that. I really like it. So I'm happy with this. And let me still add just a little bit of turbulence. You will see that when I bring up the turbulence to 1, that this is probably too much. No, it's actually okay. So you always have to have a look at those values here. Like when I crank it up too high, you can see that actually, yeah, now there is a lot of turbulence going on. Of course, you can bring up the scale here. So let me bring this up to, let's say, 10 in this case, and this one to 10 as well. And this is something that has to do, or that is based on the scale that you create and that you're creating the project in. So in this case, it's quite huge for an ink drop. If you go to oh, here we go. Now, because of the turbulence, we're allocating a lot of VRAM. So let me bring down the strength here a lot. And let's play this back. And there we go. Now we have a little bit of turbulence in there and can use this as an ink drop simulation. All right. Are there any questions so far? Let me check on the other computer here.
There are a couple of questions. I'm preparing some answers for them. How to create a nebula. There's a light bulb. I think it's a Redshift question. And yeah, and please capitalize the word question before you ask something so we can distinguish it from the rest. Is the new denoiser CPU or GPU based? That was answered.
All right, so I think we can hand over to you, right, Noseman? So if you're ready, you can just grab the screen.
I'm not ready, but I'll do it anyway. Yeah, I'm totally unprepared, so I'm just making
just like that, ladies and gentlemen, he is ready.
He is ready. Yeah, what was I doing? I was making things, you know, various stuff. So let's let me see. So I was sort of working on a nebula setup here, and let me start this. And I mean, when you're doing nebulous effects, there's no one way you can go about it. But overall, the idea is to create some sort of volume and then make it mix with different colors and then just render it. And in this particular case, what I was doing is I'm using a helix for whatever reason. So a flat helix. So I set the height to 0, and you can change the bias. It's not the height bias. I want the other bias, this one, the radial bias, to make it sort of like a spiral like that. Now, I'm not going to make a nebula. I'm going to make a galaxy. Sorry, I apologize. And I'm just using a cloner because it's easier to create a radial sort of
question.
Yeah, go ahead. Ask the questions because I'm not looking at the questions now.
This is a Darren question.
Yes.
Most spline? Because it has the cloning built in. What do you think?
Yeah, it's more clicks though.
Okay, very good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah. The same thing with the most blind. It wouldn't make such a huge difference. There we go. So we have these two, and the reason I made two is because I want to mix two colors. And when you're creating Pyro with MoGraph, you apply the tag on the cloner, not on the clone. And the same applies to when you're doing cloth. And I'm going to apply a Pyro, turn off the temperature. And these parameters, if you check out Cineversity, I've got 2 videos, one explaining the parameters of the Pyro tag, one explaining the parameters of the Pyro simulation. And I have a particular workflow where I rip out these settings and I put them here so I can have concurrently the ability to change the settings for my emitter and change the settings for my simulation. And the thing I usually do if I want to make something that doesn't react to gravity, I turn off my gravity. So now there's no buoyancy. And when I press OK, it's going to create a density field. Now, although density is predominantly smoke, we can use this for whatever reasons we want. So let's go and set a couple of colors, something like fuchsia color and let's say bluish color. So now if I rewind and press play again, I'll see these 2 colors. And you can create some sort of rotational force. And you can get the rotation. It rotates on the Z. Let me think. Does it rotate? It rotates the other way around. So let's go here and make this -5. Oh, it doesn't go minus, so I just have to reverse this. So put it on the other side, 180 degrees. And let's set this to 5. Rewind, press play. It's going to start mixing these. Oh, the other way around. What am I? Clockwise, counterclockwise, whatever. Let me just set this as it is. See, yeah. So it's coming and it's turning in that direction, and the smoke is mixing. And then you can add some noise to this, some turbulence, basically, with a bigger scale, bigger strength, so that the rotation and the turbulence mix. And of course, you can slow this down by slowing this to, let's say, 2. And once you're satisfied with your shape, because the whole idea is to create a shape that fits what you're trying to do, you can add more splines that create more of these patterns. You can just go here and just start drawing if you wish to do that. Let's get a sketch and let's draw something that goes like that, and let's draw something that goes like that. And I can just grab one of these and put it up here. And you create your initial, you sculpt the initial shape of what you want to do. You let it evolve for whatever number of frames you want. And when you're satisfied with this, you just render it. Now, talking about render, the full workflow exists on the Cineversity tutorials, but let's go and do that. Now, please, 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 3 times, go and watch the videos, because there's some nuance in this, the way the whole system works, which is very simple, but you need to know the process. You will be able to do very simply a pyro simulation, but if you want to render it, you have to do some very specific things. For example, the pyro object, although we have 3 emitters, there's always one pyro object, because by definition, the whole scene, despite how many emitters you have, is one simulation. That's it. And the way to explain how this works is, imagine if you have a single Photoshop file with a bunch of layers, and you start painting with your paintbrush. The project itself is one project. It has one resolution. You cannot have a layer with one resolution and another layer with another resolution. This is pretty much the same thing. You're painting in 3 dimensions, using each emitter as your the paintbrush, and the simulation just takes all the data you've created within your 3-dimensional bitmap and mixes it together using these settings, actually, not the Redshift settings, these settings over here. And that's how, if you see the system like that, it's going to be much easier for you to do things. So in order to render, we need to take the product of this simulation, which exists as a fog volume. So in here we see these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 grids, and we have, this is a fog volume, this is a vector volume, fog volume, vector volume, fog, and fog. And the values it generates, it always calculates these values. You cannot say it won't stop calculating if you put it to off. It's just how, if we're bringing these values back to Cinema 4D. Anyhow, to render, we need 2 components of this. And we need the component of the density itself, which is generated by these 3 parameters, and the component of the color for the density, which is controlled by these 2 parameters, the activation and the color itself. So the pyro grid, and let's call this sim, because it represents our whole simulation. We need the density and the color, because those are the important ones we need to bring in. And suddenly you see these artifacts here, and that's because the simulation is drawn, we brought the data back from the GPU, whereas when these are off, what we see here is just what's in the GPU RAM, and that's why you can't move this thing around. You can't take this preview and do something with it. But if you have your grids active and you go to your simulation settings over here, right down here at the bottom where it says draw, you turn it off. This is the sort of GPU dump, let me call it, the RAM dump. So these are the grids. We can, by definition, see the density grid. If I turn this off, you'll see this vector volume. And if you go here to the volume builder, fog is for the ones I said there, fogs, and vector volume is the ones that have 3 values, and that's velocity and color. In any case, we activate these 2, so we bring them in Cinema 4D's RAM. So this is now ready to render. This is the product of our simulation. And 1 frame exists in Cinema 4D. We have to activate Redshift, and I'm going to repeat this. I've been repeating this many times. You cannot render volumes using standard physical. You can only render it using Redshift or any other renderer that supports VDBs. That's it. So I'm just going to leave this at its default state. And now I need to add a material on this. And the material has a nice little preset called Pyro Volume. And if you put it on here, let's go and turn on our Redshift and click on this. Now, we won't see anything quite yet because we do need a light. The density itself is not self-illuminating. And there you go. We have the black and white values that are lit by whatever the light is. Now, if you want to include the color in here, you have to open your actual material. You have to go to your Pyro Volume node. And here, the information we're reading is from the sim object. We're reading the density for the density. And if I want to colorize this, I need to, by default, it uses the temperature here, but we don't have any temperature. I can remove it or just leave it. I can just forget that. In the color channel, you load the simulation color over here. And now these are the two colors that are participating, but these are not two colors. This is one color grid. This is one voxel, vector voxel grid that for every voxel in the density channel, it provides it with information for the color. And there is no distinguish. The system does not know where the color came from. It just knows that at that position, there's this color. And if the mix occurred during the simulation, as we were playing the simulation, that sort of mixing happened, we're going to have those mixed colors. And you can go to your light, your dome light, and you can increase your light. You can add volumes are really beautiful when you use backlights and stuff like that. So let me just add a Redshift camera and activate it here. And the reason I do that is so I can go to the top view without changing this view and adding whatever I want to add. And let's go and add a nice little area light. Go to my move tool, go here, rotate it around, and make it bigger. Good. And I really love these backlights when I'm doing these things because they do add a lot of information in our grids, in our volumes. Cool. Yeah, so there you go. We have the beginnings of a nebula. And again, it's good to spend more than 5 minutes on something. And while you're doing it, don't teach people how to do it. It just takes away from the experience. Of course, the good thing is that in your volume shader, you can change things like what the absorption is. So this will change how thin or thick the smoke is and allow the light to go through. You can activate your multi-scattering, which I installed the new version today. So go to globals and add a few more bouncers. And what I like to do is go to the advanced of the Pyro shader, and in the advanced, I just increase the shading a bit just to create a bit more contrast where I want it to. And yeah, you can even remap the various values here. If you increase this, your smoke should change. There you go. It changes because it changes the values. You do need to start thinking in terms of what does this grid represent. These are just values that go from 0, there's no density, to whatever number is created. And that number is defined to a great extent by the density you add and all that nice stuff. But as you're going to get used to thinking about it like that, and you can pretty much create whatever you want. Just put some effort in the original shapes, allow the simulation to evolve to a good degree, and within the tutorials, the first 10, because I've got more coming in the next weeks, which are going to show you how to do other things. I've added a lot of information, how you can use the field force to sculpt your forces and all that. So anyway, watch the videos, go to Cineversity. We've got cloth simulation and pyro simulation series, about over 2.5 hours worth of content each, which is a great thing to do with your family on Christmas, and invite your relatives and all that to watch tutorials. So this is the Nebula. And if there are any more questions, just hit me up on Twitter @NosemanGR, and we can take it from there. Now, where were we? I'm going to attempt just a sidetrack for my friend Ahmed to do the light bulb thing. And it all depends, right? What are you trying to do? There are, in my view, some misconceptions about how a light bulb is better defined. If you want to have a clear light source, I've put a spherical visible area light inside here. I've set the volume contribution from this light to be a bit less, and I've added a redshift environment to get that volume scattering. This is how you control the scattering, and it can become quite overwhelming. And on top of it, I just added a glass material, and that glass material just has, I set it to thin-walled, so it doesn't create any um, oh my God, it's not
Refraction?
diffraction, it's refraction. Oh my God, my brain stuck with diffraction, and diffraction is when you create a rainbow. So refraction. Now, what I've seen in the past is people want to light up the wire inside, and that will be visible for lower powered light sources. In that particular case, you can use a mesh light. And I'm not going to do it right now. You can use a mesh light. You create an object made of polygons, and you link it here. And that will, well, I mean, I'm not going to do it. When have I ever said I'm not going to do it and I didn't do it? Never did I. So I
It's
stand
like when
corrected.
I say I've got one more thing, and then I talk for the next hour. You know,
Yeah, you
it's
do.
those
talk for the next one.
implied lies
it's
or
not.
something.
It's not lighting up, and it's not lighting up. So let me put it under the usual thing. Let's try a connect object and see what happens, and let's go to the light. And if it doesn't work, maybe it just needs, yeah, there you go. Put it, if it doesn't work, so your refrigerator breaks down, put it under a connect object. Or your dishwasher breaks down, put it under a connect object. So your kid's not doing well at school, put your kid under a dishwasher and put that under a connect object. So there are many ways to do that. So you can create your little shape and light it up, and then it's up to the light intensity to make it look how you want it to look. But it's fairly simple. Now, if you have one of those opaque light bulbs that you can't see through and you don't care to see this little thing. Oh, by the way, a little secret. I would say dirty secret, but it's not dirty at all. If we want the glow, the volume contribution to be closer to the source, there's a parameter for that. And I think it was a tutorial by Saul or someone else, but I think it was Saul that was explaining this. And that is the attenuation, or that, no, it's the anisotropy. It's the anisotropy. And the anisotropy brings the glow in the negative value closer to the source. Whereas if you spread it out, it comes closer to the camera. So we have these two different components that will give you a totally different type of glow. Look at this. It's barely visible, but maybe that's what you want to achieve, that minute sort of detail over here. And to finish it off, for no apparent reason, I'm going to set this, let's set it to temperature. And you can change the temperature of the color, like a nice little orangey light and all that. Anyhow, the last thing I want to say is that sometimes the best way to go about this is not to use the interior filament or anything like that. Let's zoom out and see how good this looks. This looks good. I'm compelled to make some butterflies flying around, but no, I'm not going to do that. So the other thing you can do is just light your object. Either use directly a visible light, so a sphere, a visible sphere without any glass, because with very bright light, you lose a lot of the reflections that you won't. If you look at your lamp and it's 100-watt one, you'll probably go blind before you can see any reflections. So don't try it at home, kids. And sometimes we think that adding more of what happens in nature will give us a better effect, but in fact it doesn't. So in this particular case, I would just say no glass. I'm just going to make this as big as I want it to be. So let's select all these and press Command Control. I'll make my lamp and do that. Or ideally, you can get an actual object, like a glass object, like the glass, the outer glass. And you can create an incandescent material. So we have incandescent materials here, which we can put here and create them. The only thing, as far as I know, is that they don't react to the volume. They don't create the volume glow. So yeah, if anyone knows anything more about the volume glow and if there's a way to achieve it, please let me know, because yeah, it doesn't have any contributions as far as I know with the volume, but you can add a secondary one. Darren, do you have any opinion on that, please, sir?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, and I found that the incandescent material is slower than doing like a mesh light, like an area light with a mesh assigned to it. They're certainly with GI a lot more noisy, the incandescent is. But what I really wanted to say was, there is a butterfly asset that we could put fire on in your beautiful sunset, but it's just a thought.
Okay. Thank you for the knowledge grenade, Darren. That was good. There's a reason why lights are faster. That's because there's specific code that deals with the lights as components of a scene, as compared to an object that's emitting something. So yeah, and well, the last thing you could do, of course, is just set your Redshift material to have some sort of emission, but that doesn't work with volumes. If any developers are listening to us, any kind of emissive surface, adding, volumetric component, that will be great. Thank you. Please, pretty please. Good. So let's see if there are any quick questions here. Let me see.
I can
if
show
anyone,
another thing that is a good use case for thinking outside the box.
Yeah, go ahead, and I have some stuff to show in a second. So,
Just give me a
Jonas, take the
second.
screen. Back
I'm-
to you.
I'm-
No, we need to do it properly. Back to you, Jonas.
All right, Noseman. Here we go. Can you see my screen now? Yes. So what I have on screen is an explosion and some sort of water drop down here. So the cool thing about volumes and explosions is actually that you can use them pretty well as air inside of water, like when you drop something into the water and you see not the splash on top of everything, but the air that is going away from the water. I don't know how to explain that properly. Maybe some native speaker can help me here. But I guess you know what I mean. So I'm going to recreate this here simply by, let me do this. So I've got this volume that I used before, and I'm going to create a copy of that and just delete the pyro material. And in that volume, I'm going to deactivate the temperature. So I'm just going to use the density, and then I'm just going to rotate it so that it's upside down. And the only thing we need to do here is to mesh it. So we use a volume mesher here, and if I hold down Alt while I create it, it will automatically be a parent of that explosion. So here you can see that we have this grid now in here, but it is very, very detailed, and there's a lot of splashes and stuff going on. But one thing we can do, actually there are many things we can do. First of all, we can always play with the voxel range here. And in this case, it's taking a little bit longer because the volume is quite dense. Let's go with numerical values here. Let's go with 50. However, another thing you can do is throw this explosion into a volume builder first. And I again did the Alt trick. And once you do that, you can use the voxel size to control the resolution a little bit and use it to make it more or less detailed. But then the other thing that we can do, let's keep this at, let's say 5. So I want a little bit of detail. I want a little bit more detail, but then I'm going to smooth this to some degree, like here. Yeah, I think that's good. And then everything you need to do is just to throw a material on it that is refractive, and that will already look cool. So let me start the IPR here. And that's the old one. That's the new one. That's the one that I just created. Then I just created another dome light. And if you, yeah, let me recreate this as well. So I created a dome light. And now you can see that everything is lit up, even the explosion. If you just want to light this part here, you can always go, well, let me first of all bring down the intensity a little bit, but you can also go to the details. And if you don't want this dome light to light the volume, you simply bring down the volume contribution here, like so. And then we can also go to the object tab, and let's say we don't want to see the background here. And then we have something that looks like water down here and an explosion here. And I did that now with a static like VDB, but you can also do this with your simulations. So you can throw them into the volume builder. Once you have a Pyro object, you can do that. Although I would always recommend to cache out the stuff beforehand. But the thing is that once it's cached out, you can use it multiple times, and you can mesh it and do all sorts of stuff with it. Even stuff that doesn't look like fire, but like water in this case. All right, that's what I wanted to show here. And yeah, let's go back to.
You can pass it back to me if you want.
Right? Yeah, just grab the screen.
Oh yeah, I have to do that. Why do I have to do everything?
Yeah, since I have this new setup where I have a PC right next to my Mac, it's a bit more tricky here.
Fancy Jonas.
Fancy Jonas. So you should be seeing my beautiful screen by now. So I've got a couple of notes. Now let's talk about the Pyro object. So Jonas showed something extremely interesting. I'm going to click on this, just go back to my default state. And again, this is something that you need to understand to make sure you don't get confused. Watching my tutorials, you're going to realize that the 30 centimeter sphere is my favorite object after the icosahedron. This one is not icosahedron, but it's my favorite sphere. So I'm going to right click and add a simulation tag. So a Pyro simulation tag, boom, and press play. Good. And then, because I don't know how to use Pyro, I'm going to try and move it. So I'm going to select my Pyro default. I'm going to move it, and it won't move. All right. I press A on my keyboard to refresh it, and it disappears. And all these weird things are happening. So rewind, press play. What's going on here? It's in the tutorials. I'm going to say it again. You have to understand this. What we are seeing here does not exist in Cinema 4D. As far as Cinema 4D is concerned, it has a sphere object that has an emission tag, and a Pyro object which, as far as Cinema 4D is concerned, doesn't give a rat's bottom about. What is this? This is a direct dump from our GPU RAM. It was implemented this way, so we have the least amount of overhead when we're using Cinema 4D. This current simulation in here does not consume any RAM in Cinema 4D, and if it does, it's very, very little. It's only the representation itself. It's like a bitmap proxy. The question becomes, all right, why do I have this? Well, it's so that you can just add a Pyro tag and press play and see what you're doing, right? It's a very good starting point to start doing things and change your settings and so forth. Now, another thing I want to say is that you'll be tempted to believe that these Pyro settings have anything to do with the Pyro object. They don't. What you see here is just a link, a mirror of going to your project settings, simulation, Pyro, these things here. Forget about this, please forget about it. Take some sticky tape and put it on your monitor right here, and don't look at this, right? Don't pay attention, forget about it. Bye-bye, bye-bye Pyro, right? Command D, go here. That's the way you should do it. I'm going to be watching everyone. We have special software running. I know what you're doing. I get a ping every time someone goes here and clicks on this. And you'll be hearing, I'm going to come knocking at your door.
Someone's going to believe it.
So, what was I trying to say? Okay, so if you want to do your pyro very quickly, change some settings here. I want to go and set 5 units per frame and no units per second. I want it to be very smoky. There you go. Now it's very smoky. You know something? I want to go crazy. 500 units per. So it's a very quick way of just getting a general idea of what you're doing. And you can go and say, oh, I'm going to go to my settings and set my voxel size to 2 because I want to see this in better detail, right? Look at all this blockiness. Rewind, press play, and now we have less blockiness. The parameters do change, so be aware that when you change your voxel size, your parameters will change. Anyhow, and I'm happy with this. And I want to do things with this, right? I want to do things. So if you want to render, or if you've finalized your simulation and you're done with all your emitters and all that, you have to select this object and go and cache it. That way you can scrub, you can do all sorts of things. If you want to continue doing some things without having to cache yet, you can still do that. How do we do that? Well, you go to your Pyro object, go to the grids and say, okay, I want to do something fancy with the density grid. So turn it on. And because now the overall look of my simulation, I don't care about it. I've created it. It looks good. And now I want to start playing with these grids and doing all sorts of fancy stuff. Go to your project settings, go to simulation, Pyro, go down here. And everyone just close these up because every time you open it, you're going to be afraid. They're a bit intimidating. They're very simple. The tutorial exists. Turn it off. Draw. Turn it off. Turn off the bounding box. I don't want to see green squares. Excellent. So now we have our density grid. And I'm going to call this dense. Right? Dense. Excellent. Now I want my temperature grid, right? So let's take this little bugger. Let's make a copy of it. Oh, it moves. Yes, when you activate your grids, it can move because now you've received the data from the GPU. This is what this does. Off, you don't receive it. On, you do receive it. And if it's either on or on export, it will cache if you wish to cache it. I want this not to be the density grid. I want this to be the temperature grid. Different grid. Same fire. Call it temp. Excellent. What do I want to do now? Well, I want to make some clones of this. You go and you clone it. Oh, it's going to take a while. Why did I do that? Anyway, you can make a clone of it because now it's a real object. I'm going to take this out because I don't want to slow down my presentation. I've got some pace. I'm going to turn it around 180 degrees. I'm going to put it under here, just like Jonas showed us, because I'm very good at copying other people's good ideas. I think that's my best talent. And then I'm going to go and mesh this. Why? Because it's a volume and I can. And play with this number and do this. I'm making now, and the funny thing is that this is live. You can play it. You get the density grid and you will get the temperature grid. Why wasn't I seeing the preview? What happened here? I can see the density. Where's my temperature? Oh, here it is. What happened? Go to your simulation settings. This is a generator. This is a simulation. Scene, simulate before generators. Boop. You like my little sound? Boop. And then you press here.
The sound
Beep.
was amazing.
And now you have these two concurrent things. Now, I want to make this even more fancy now because I'm trying to make something rather different from... let me just zero this out. For some reason, I just want the numbers to be correct, okay? Don't judge me. Don't judge me. So get a plane. Put the plane down here, and you will say, okay, I'm going to make this a collider. And this is not going to work. You know why it's not going to work? It's just going to go through. Boom, right through. Because as far as the simulation is concerned, the temperature is going upwards. What we're doing here is just rotating it around. So always be aware when you have these sort of secondary setups and you put things together, what was the original thing that was happening? The original thing was... Go to your simulation Pyro settings, turn this on. This is the original thing. I can make these invisible for now. So you want to do that, take this, put it up here. Now we have this little shape. I can't see it because did I turn off the draw? Did I do something like that? Oh no, I turned Yeah, I turned off the density. Anyway, we're going to see it now playing with all its might and glory. I don't have to see this. Now you're going to see, we're going to get that. Now I can turn this off. So I can sculpt my various simulations. And this gives you the ability to create objects. I can go to this object and put it under a null. I can use a smoothing deformer and say, yeah, I want to smooth this quite a bit. So you can create things that look like flows. And yeah, and you can clone these things. And this is live. This is still live. But there's a round trip going. We have the simulation we have the simulation settings over here and the simulation emitters. They're sending the data to the GPU. The GPU is doing its magic. And I've told everyone, when I say the word magic I have no idea how it does it. So it does its magic and then returns the data in the form of a grid. Now, if you're ever curious,
you could totally drop on a not maybe not correction deformer, but a camera deformer would be cool. So you'd have like that grid that you could actually sculpt on to deform it. I haven't tried it. I don't know if it works, but
with procedural, well, there you go. There's a tutorial you can do for us. So another thing I do, which is it's a good way to learn how the system works, is you make a bunch of these copies here. There we go. So we have density, temperature. I'm going to put this up here and call it color, and turn on the color. Turn off this. I'm going to set this to fuel and call it F for fuel. I'm going to turn this to velocity and call it V. I'm going to turn this to pressure and call it E. And this one is D for divergence. D. Then I'm going to select all these and I'm going to space them out. So num, our typical thing, times 400. Just space them out. Here are my grids. Here are all my grids. Density, the color. Color is a vector that's pointing in the direction of the color because each and every one of these, it's created by a single source. So the color is the same. If I rewind and press play, you will see that that grid is going to look ever so slightly different because it's red. We have the temperature grid, which is over here. And to see the difference, you can say that maybe I want a very little temperature, so 500 units just per frame. So you're going to see that this grid is going to be a bit less dense. I have my F, which is the I forget, fuel. Now there is no fuel because this didn't generate any fuel. There you go. The fuel was 0. Let's go and add 0.1 fuel so we can get a fuel grid as well. And we get that did you see that little thing? And it burnt away. Now there it is, the fuel. The fuel is an interesting one. It's because it doesn't, you have to combust it. If you don't combust it, you can advect it using noises. I'm going to show you that in a second. Velocities, there you go. All the little swirls that are happening here, you can use this to advect particles. You can create a simple particle system and use this in a field force. You have your pressure. Blue is negative and white is a positive pressure. And you have your divergence, which I still haven't found any way to use it other than to show fanciful things over here. So well, I was going to say something, and as usual, oh yeah, the fuel. And this is a tutorial that hasn't been released yet. So I'm going to get a sphere, of course, make it 30. And I'm going to go and add a Pyro Fuel. Now, Pyro Fuel and Pyro is the same thing. It will just change its icon. And look at this. If I turn off the density, I'm going to turn off the color, turn off the temperature, and now set fuel to on. It becomes a fuel volume. And let's go and take our volume, activate fuel, turn everything else off because I want to see it when it starts generating. There you go. That's my fuel grid. Go to my project settings, turn off draw and bounding box. So what you see here is a grid, a volume grid that has 10 units. So in terms of thinking of it as a volume builder, it's a fog volume where the maximum value is 10, but every frame it adds more and more and more. So if there was a way, there is, but I'm not going to do it now, you could read the values. You would see that every frame you would get 10 more of these. So you set this to, let's say, frame range, and you say from frame 2 to frame 10, I'm going to add 1 unit of fuel to this. Now, nothing is really moving, right? And yet there's a parameter in your simulation settings in the advanced that says Advect Fuel. Sorry, Advect Fuel. And what does that mean is that if I have a turbulence here and make it, let's say, 50 and change the scale, what it's going to do is now my turbulence is moving my fuel around. And because I'm fancy, I'm going to set this to 3 just to make it look a bit better. And we have this. And because this is a live volume, it's not burning or anything. This is just a set amount of something. And I can select my emitter and say, I don't want it to be a surface emitter. I want it to be a volume emitter. So it's going to emit from the whole volume of that sphere. And now you have something, you can turn this into anything you want. You can mesh it, you can render it, you can do whatever you want with it. Fuel, let's put it under a measure, volume measure. And now I have this thing that is sort of growing. And if I set my voxel size something small, you will see that it's going to become even more detailed. I can't see it. Go to your scene settings and set simulate before generators. And now you will see it expanding live. You can make cells. You can make all sorts of odd things. One setup I did do was, it was experimental. I don't know exactly where it is, but nonetheless, it may become a tutorial, was a cell for medical illustrators that breaks and the fluid spills out, and the fluid is nothing more than a volume, a fuel volume over here, because we can render this, right? Just like we can render anything else we need using Redshift. Let me just show you Redshift. Let's close this. Let's go to my Redshift. Let me close a few of these. I can bring up my Redshift here. Good. Bring this here, add a Redshift material, Pyro Volume. Good. Let's drag this on this. Let's turn this on, and let's go here because we need to designate the fuel to be the source of scattering. So go here, Pyro Fuel, and let's add a nice little dome light. And I haven't played my simulation. Now, when you're rendering in GPU and simulating, you will reach your memory limit easier because it's both the systems, Redshift and the Pyro system, use the same GPU RAM. So remember that you may be consuming double the amount of RAM or something like that. And now, this is not fire, this is not smoke. This can be whatever you want it to be. Right? This can be a piece of fuzz on my hair. I do not have hair, so I misspoke. But, you know, a little dust particle or something like that. And it's great that we have these systems now that can evolve, and we use the forces to guide them. Talking about guidance, I'm sorry, I'm on a rampage here. So the field force is your best friend. The field force is your best friend here. And the field force, you need to learn how to use it. I don't care how you're going to do that. You need to learn how to use that. I'm going to use a spherical field here. And by default, it pulls things inside. So go to direction and invert direction. And let's add to velocity 50 and see what happens here. Because now this is going to affect how our thingy-madoodle is going to evolve here. So it's going to push things out. I'm going to make it push things out even more. And I'm not going to use value. I'm going to normalize just to make these things sort of freak out. I'm going to make this 500. So now we are creating this exploding thing. But I don't want it to expand in all directions, right? I want it to expand in one direction. Go to your field force. Go to the fields part. This is for direction. This is for masking. And say, I want a spherical field here. And move it. And what's going to happen now is that only that component is going to move. So you can put something around this, a sphere, semi-transparent. You can fracture it, use tearing with cloth, and then you can spill out the contents of this. So what I'm trying to show here is that the amount of flexibility you have to do things, don't see the Pyro system as a Pyro system, right? That's a nice little contradiction. This is not a Pyro system. This is a system that, of course, can do Pyro and can do it extremely easy. But at the same time, it can allow you to create volumetric grids that evolve, and you can control that evolution using your simulation settings, the dissipations and all that kind of stuff, your emitters to bring data into the system, and forces to move things around any way you want. So yeah, and add a couple of colliders to this, and you're golden. The great example, and we're going to emphasize that one of the projects I'm doing in my Cineversity tutorial is one of the many scenes that were given to us by Yang Ge, our master trainer from China. He's a genius. I think he's an artificial intelligence. Like he's perfect at anything he does. And he just gave us a bunch of scenes, and one of them is a box that has smoke inside and all that. Check that tutorial out, because it will show you how simple it is to make a guided emission of smoke, then ignite it from one side. And anyway, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Okay, let's see what else do I have here. One last thing.
So one thing I just wanted to add here, because it's a very important thing that you just showed, is that you can mask any force with fields.
Yes,
so you're not restricted to the turbulence and buoyancy and gravity that we have inside of the Pyro object. All of the forces that Noseman is showing at the moment are working, and you can mask them using fields, which is super cool. So
now everything is going to move in that way when they enter the influence of this smoke. There you go, moving that way. So you can add all that amazing control. Now it becomes, you can do great stuff because you can use volumes themselves inside of your field force or any of your fields as well. So the combinations you can do are pretty unbound. There's too much of it. So one last thing I'm going to show before I close off my presentation is that to understand the system and how it works to a certain degree, if you go to the draw and you draw the tree structure here, and let me go, I've got my Pyro default here, and press play. We get these little squares here. These squares, the important ones are the yellow ones, and I activated them by drawing this tree structure. These indicate the amount of RAM that's occupied in the system. And although it wasn't made for that, the more of these you have, the more RAM you're occupying. Even to the extent that maybe I have a second emitter over here, and I press play, and you will see that now we have these two blocks. These are not two simulations. This is the same simulation. This is what we call a sparse grid. Other simulation systems, you define a box within which the simulation takes place, and if you reach the limits, everything disappears. Here, the system is going to grow as far as it needs to, and the needs to, you define it by telling it how many of these bricks, right? The yellow ones are bricks. And if this is set to 1, and I go 1 frame, what it will do is it will find the limit where the data is generated inside these boxes. And it's going to say, I'm going to add 1 more because I have the fleeting suspicion that the whatever you're making is going to move outwards. If you add 2 of these, then you get 2, padding of 2. Now, why is this useful? It's useful to understand internally what's going on, and things like the voxel count. Each of these bricks is made of 16 by 16 by 16 voxels. That's 4,096 voxels, each voxel being 1 centimeter. This is what this box means. That this thing here contains 4,096 little boxes, and that little box has one value for density, one value for color, one for temperature, one for fuel, one velocity, one pressure, one for divergence. Just like your Photoshop image, if you go to 1 pixel, the pixel has one value of red, one value of green, one value of blue, and one value for alpha channel, or any alpha channel for that matter. This is what this box represents. And you can say, I want these boxes to be 32 by 32 by 32. And this will improve the speed of your simulation. It's going to make these 8 times larger, because now you have 32,768 voxels in each one of these. But each voxel is the same size. It is faster, but it consumes potentially more memory. So that's how you need to view these boxes, so you get a better understanding what's going on. So bricks are made of voxels. By raising this number to the power of 3, the padding dictates how much it's going to pre-allocate RAM. And if you're wondering what the pink ones are, the magenta ones, these are previously allocated places in RAM which are not used now. This is something you shouldn't care about. Don't just ignore these ones. Just if you're trying to see why you're getting in a certain simulation out of memory errors, what you need to do is turn on your tree structure and see if you're getting boxes in places where the simulation is not visible for whatever reason, because there are certain numbers that indicate when it's going to be calculated, some thresholds and all that. And slowly you're going to start working around your simulations to consume less RAM, to become faster, optimized, and so forth. And
so
the last...
what you're saying is that those thresholds will turn on or off those boxes?
Okay, here's a great segue for what I want to say now to reply to that. The thresholds, they don't literally turn on and off boxes. One thing you need to understand about this is that although there's an illusion that things are moving, right? The smoke is moving, there is no motion happening. You would say, yeah, but the smoke was here and now it's here. No, it's not motion. A value gets transferred from one box to the other. That's what's happening. If you create an animation in After Effects, a movie, nothing moves in a movie. It's just pixels changing colors. This is the same thing, values. And what happens here is the way the simulation decides if a certain value, given the certain circumstances, is going to propagate to the next voxel or the next brick is by these thresholds. If the density is lower than 0.0001 unit of density, it will be considered gone. If the temperature is less than 1 unit of temperature, it will be considered gone. It won't advect anymore, won't move its value, won't propagate its value to the system. And this is exactly the same way renderers work when you're setting the sampling here. The threshold, and this is a general thing you need to be aware of when it comes to digital image creation, rendering, and all that. The thresholds basically decide, and in particular for Redshift or other renderers, when it calculates a specific set of pixels, if the luminance between these pixels happens to be lower than this certain threshold, then it will consider that the contrast between them is too low for any noise to be visible. That's what it does. All it does is compare the values of luminance between 2 pixels. And if there's a stepping, look at this gray bar here and this dark gray bar. The difference in contrast is quite stark. If these were 2 pixels, you would see noise. But as you're refining your render and you're smoothing out the values between 2 pixels, when that contrast comes under a certain threshold and you define that threshold is enough, that's where the system would stop refining that particular block of pixels. The same thing happens here. The system is going to define if there's enough density or temperature or some sort of fuel or some sort of velocity within a set of these voxels to decide if it's going to consider it gone, that it totally dissipated, or it needs to continue transferring its value to the neighbors and the neighbors and the neighbors and the neighbors. So all these things do make a difference when you're creating particular types of animations. And all you have to see is the difference how steam gets absorbed in the atmosphere. If it's a cold day and you look on top of a building where the steam is coming out, it dissipates much faster than smoke because the atmosphere absorbs the vapor, whereas with smoke, the particulates don't get absorbed, they just get diffused. So if you're trying to create smoke, you're going to use different dissipation parameters. When you're creating fire, you're going to have different dissipation parameters and so forth. And you may even need to play around with the thresholds. And if you want a simulation to have different thresholds or different dissipations, you can't do that. These are global parameters for each and every one of the simulations. And if you want to do that, there is a way to have concurrently more than one simulations using the simulation scene, but these scenes will not interact.
Yeah. Man, yeah, it's deep. It is so deep, but I love how it's the grids and not like just one sort of static box like in other programs. Before we wrap up, can I share my screen?
Yes, I'm done. I'm done. I'm only gonna so you can take the screen. Back to you, Darren. I have to do that.
Take it. How do I do that? Is there like a button that I have to press or something? I don't know. Okay, so earlier I mentioned, you could totally put this deformer on it. I just want to show this deformer, everybody, because I don't see it used a lot, and it is a really cool one. So this is a work in progress, but I have the Raptor breath sort of coming out, and it's sort of going up a little too high for me. So I want to use a deformer to tweak that. And I am going to show you the camera deformer here. So I'm just going to get the camera deformer, and I'm going to make that a child of the mesher. And now in point mode with my move tool active and soft selection with a reasonable radius set, I can just sort of tweak this to deform that emission to my liking.
That's super cool.
That is all. Thank you very much.
Well, how would you animate that? That is a question people might ask themselves.
That sounds like a Jonas question.
PLA? Jonas, show us. Throw Jonas under
the
bus.
I'm actually asking.
Nah, that's your
I think
homework.
you would. I think you would do it via PLA.
We can use. So probably. So here, let me go back to sharing. So let's see if I go. Okay, so let's check out the settings here. There is a strength, right? So of course we can keyframe the strength, but we can also use fields. So I could use any fields to animate this, like we use fields to animate anything, right? But maybe we can get away with a point level animation for this. It's an interesting question. Let's see here. Gosh, I haven't done this in forever. So we want that. We want these off and point level on. And then the camera deformer is selected at frame, let's see, I'll go frame 30 and I'll keyframe that. That should, yep, there we go. I can see the little light blue rectangle down there. And then I'll go back to frame 20 and I can reset that grid and hit record. And if we're lucky, there we go. So point level animation does work there.
Put simulate before generator so we can see this happening.
Yeah, I already have that on.
Oh, you have that on?
Yeah, it's coming. Wait for it.
There you go.
Yeah, here. So let's offset this to here. And then here it comes. Oh, interesting. Okay, so I'm gonna have to explore that, but it is animatable. Good news.
Your dinosaur
Cool.
doesn't seem to feel well.
No, I should probably put him down.
All right.
Oh, I have an
Cool.
answer to Tyler. Tyler Lancer. When did they add that? Um, 13 years. It was the camera deformer was
Oh, yeah,
added
a long time
thir
ago.
13 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think it was a request from Brett Bays. And one of the developers back then, for some odd reason, I think, just woke up one morning and coded it and put it in a release. And we're like, what? You can use that for animations to refine your cartoons and all that. It's absolutely amazing. Yeah, it's been there for the majority of some of our viewers' lives. Not me. A very small portion of my life. I'm too old.
So you have been there at day one? Oh my gosh.
Not day one, 1997, when was I first saw, I was in London at a sort of a expo, and there were these German-looking guys sitting over a Mac, and you could actually see it rendering. You could see the line going down while it was rendering. And I think those guys were Philip and who else? I don't remember who else it was. Maybe Harold. And yeah, that was 1997 was my first visual exposure where you could actually see the line going down when it's rendering. With other programs, you had to have a cough in between line, scan lines. It was the first release that was out for Mac and PC. It was just after the Amiga days, and they had just ported it to Mac and PC.
Well, that's super interesting.
Wow.
It didn't. Yeah. No, it didn't start at 8.6. Oh, you started. Okay. Mr. After Effects 4D started 8.6. Kids.
That's earlier than me. I started with 9.5.
My God, oh, you know something? I may adopt
7.1.
That's how young you are.
17.
Wow.
Very cool. So yeah,
This has been good.
yeah. I'm gonna grab the screen because I think it's time to wrap up.
Yeah, it's half an hour past the time we have to wrap up.
Yeah, exactly. And all of the people now have to put out their dishwashers out of the Connect and their children out of the dishwasher in case they forgot them because the show was so cool.
Yeah. Mommy.
Yeah. There you
don't know about
are.
that joke,
There
though.
you are. All right. So yeah, in case you tuned in late or you want to rewatch the whole thing, simply go to the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel, and here is the place where we host all of the webinars that we are doing. Also on the Maxon events page, when you go to the Maxon website and then news events or maxon.net/events, you can see all the events that we are doing. That's at the moment, these are all webinars and they are all for free. You can join them, you can hang out with us. And tomorrow there is another episode of VFX and Chill, which is always really cool. And we have a demystifying post-production series about Pyro as well, running at the moment on Mondays. And then next Thursday, we have another episode of Max on Color. So yeah, always check out Cineversity because Cineversity is new. So the URL is cineversity.maxon.net. And we updated that yesterday. So browse the stuff in case you want to learn some of our other products, like all the Regine plugins and or ZBrush and all the others.
And suggestion, because this is new, it's been through rigorous testing, the new Cineversity site. If anyone finds anything odd, unexpected, anything, please report it. There's a link to report certain things there, just to make sure that we can refine it. We want it to be the best experience possible. And another thing you realize is that it has links not only to Cineversity videos built by Maxon or for Cineversity, but it has links to other videos as well. So Cineversity is becoming and is now the hub for all quality training, wherever it comes from. We keep adding links and videos, so keep that in mind. If you do find an instructor that has made interesting videos for Cinema 4D or any of our products or within our industry, please let us know. Please let us know. Just send an email to any of the known email addresses, and we'll make sure to link it to Cineversity or get permissions and all that. So, yep, that's all I have to say. I always say that, but I always have something more to say. Okay, back to you guys.
All right. So, yeah, the last thing I want to share here is that we want to give away free t-shirts. And let me copy out the link here, because I think if I copy it in the chat, I can. So today we are not just streaming to the Maxon training team channel, but also to the main Maxon channel. And let me make sure that everyone gets. I cannot paste it here. All right. There we go. So this link should now be seen by everyone. And I think...
Wait, I have one more thing to say.
No.
So
wait. I'm going to post the passcode as well, because you will only have to pay for the shipping when you enter that passcode in the beginning.
Maxon on fire. It's Maxon on fire, right?
Let me quickly double check if that popped up in all the other chats as well. Yes, it did. You. Yeah. Cool.
So don't forget, watch the tutorials, simulation, cloth simulation, and pyro simulation. There are things missing from the content. You need to ask the questions, right? You have to do the work. Watch the tutorials, do your experiments, do your homework, ask the questions. At NosemanGR on Twitter, that's where you can find me, or you can email the training team, because it's your requests, it's your struggles that become the tutorials we do. We do not know what you struggle with. You have to tell us, and we're compelled to help people. That's why we're here. We can't help ourselves. We're just like Roger Rabbit when he hears the tune, right? You ask the question, we have to answer.
What tune?
We have no choice. We have no free will when it comes to this. So indulge us.
All right. So let me try to bring up all faces here. There we go. It's working now. So I didn't do anything. It's just working now. That was just a little technical hiccup in the beginning. So here we are. You can now watch our faces for the next and last 5 seconds. Enjoy. Or not.
Happy holidays to everyone. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, we have another Ask the Trainer session before the holidays in 2 weeks.
Maybe someone wants to have a holiday earlier. Come on.
Well, we wanted to do something about like winter themed, right? Let's see. So bring up your questions. How are we gonna create snow or maybe smoke in a winter landscape or so, stuff like that. You know.
You really want to go there? You want to do snow, Jonas? Because now it's on the record.
Don't listen to Jonas. Bring your own questions.
Are you regretting
please.
saying it?
Let's see.
So Jonas, in the next show, Jonas is going to show us how to make snow. Thank you, Jonas, because I have no idea how to make snow. Falling, piling up, rendering it properly. Yeah, melting. So Jonas. Oh, great. Thank you so much.
I just noticed that I shouldn't have said that.
Well, sorry, but now
anyway, challenge accepted. There are many ways to create smoke, and there are not just like photorealistic ones. And yeah, let's just
save that.
Chicken.
Oh, come on. Okay, let's prepare a snow material and let's compare them then.
Yeah, we can do foam and all that. I was trying to figure out a method to create.
For everyone at work, we're done. Thank you for joining us. We're just going to hang out for a little bit, but thank you for joining us. You're not going to miss anything.
If you want to see foam, send me a message.
Yeah, let's wrap up here. So, bye everyone. Have a great time, and see you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye-bye.